Afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today with Congressman Duncan. And we have President Morris on the line and Sarah. And we know the Congressman needs to go vote, so we're going to ask him some questions. And he's been kind enough to sit in with us a few minutes and work with us on this schedule. So we're going to jump right into our plan and move right along. Congressman, it's great to have you today.
That's great being here, David. Thanks for having me. And as many of the people on the call know, I was a realtor for a while in the real estate auction business, had my own firm. So I dealt with pre-2010, I dealt with a lot of the same issues you guys dealt with, although I know the markets change a lot in the way you have to do business now. In the post-2008 world is different than we dealt with, but we're here to help where we can. So David, I look forward to your questions.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, throughout the pandemic, Congressman, the residential real estate market has had a positive economic impact on homeowners, the communities, and the economy. And however, access to residential real estate market has been severely limited by a historic 50-year record shortage of affordability of homes and availability for purchase. What can Congress do to address the affordable housing shortage in our country?
Well, I think the first thing we can do is get Americans back to work and quit incentivizing folks to sit at home. And I wonder how all the unemployment benefits that we've seen for over a year now will affect individuals' credit scores and their ability to show income and qualify for a mortgage. I think that's probably my biggest concern. But getting folks back to work and trying to get the economy back on track in a post-COVID world is important. There's a lot of issues that are affecting housing. There are local and state issues, but from a federal side, I think the most important thing we can do is try to get the economy back on track and people to work.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Congressman. A recent study, Congressman, has showed that the U.S. has developed an underbuilding gap of about 5.5 million housing units over the last 20 years. And a lot of that happened after the 2008 crash. And, you saw developers pulling out and it translates into about a $4.4 trillion underinvestment in housing. Even modest steps taken now to reduce that gap would unleash tremendous economic activity and create millions of new jobs. Realtors support the Bipartisan Housing Supply and Affordability Act and the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act. Can we count on you for your support of these bills?
Yeah, so I'm going to keep looking at those bills. They've just got on my radar screen. I'm not going to commit at this point, but I think in a broader scope of things, we need to look, if we're talking about affordability of housing, we're going to look at building cost right now. The fact that the Canadian border's closed, the fact that we've had negative timber policies in this country that have affected supply and demand, not in the South because we have mostly private land for pines that are cut for lumber, but in the North and Northwest and even cross border sales with Canada, there's a lot of issues that the federal government needs to address in order to start trying to help those costs come down. I could throw in gypsum and concrete as well, because a lot of that comes from China now. So there's a lot of trade policies that are affecting the affordability of housing. And I think from a congressional standpoint, that's where we need to put our focus right now before we delve into a lot of other things. There's some tax policy issues, I'm sure, that are included in that line, but we'll take a look at it. And I just don't want to commit because I'm not that familiar with it, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. And one thing we don't want to forget about is the 1031 like-kind exchange. Preserving this vital liquidity and encourages additional investments and helps small and minority-owned businesses expand and grow. Moreover, like-kind exchanges fill gaps in the housing supply not covered by other incentives for the development and affordability of housing. Multiple family housing transactions represent 40% of real estate like-kind exchanges, while single family housing make up another significant portion. Limiting like-kind exchanges would increase the cost of rental housing and rents. So what do you think about the 1031? I feel sure you know all about those.
I've used it myself. So it's an attractive incentive for folks to reinvest capital gains a lot of times into another piece of property, oftentimes going up in value. And so we see a threat right now from the Biden administration on capital gains and raising capital gains tax rates. And if those rates go up, then 1031 exchanges are going to be more attractive to investors, especially. So I don't want to do away with that. Like I said, I've utilized it myself and deferred some taxable gains there. And if we're going to incentivize investors to keep buying the new product that's out there, we're going to have that sort of tax policy in place.
Yeah, I actually closed this morning on one, and the gentleman did a 1031 exchange. It was a farmer, and he sold some land off, so he did that, saved some money. So yeah, I was involved in one this morning, actually.
Yeah. In fact, the house I live in has 24 acres, and I sold, before I bought it, I sold 18 acres and did a 1031 for some of the land that my current house sits on. It was actually divided in some tracts, so we were able to do that acreage for acreage swap to save me some money on that, on the sale of the 18 acres. So
Sure. It's a good tool. And, you know, it's also important for small business. You know, the office I'm sitting in now, the owner of the company, you know, did a 1031 to do it, because you can't afford to do those taxes if you're moving offices. You know,
yeah.
it would be.
And the other thing about investors in a post 2008 world, a lot of banks wouldn't loan money on non-owner occupied commercial real estate. So if you didn't have a doctor's office or your CPA practice within that duplex or that strip center, they weren't going to loan money on it. We've got to incentivize investors to make those kind of investments in commercial real estate and development properties.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Let's change the topic a little bit from taxes to independent contractors. The re-examination of independent contractors status has become a topic of intense discussion. I'm sure you've heard of the PRO Act. Many new companies who had viewed as employees as independent contractors. More than 87% of NAR's 1.4 million members are classified as independent contractors, most whom choose to be classified as such to benefit from the greater freedom, flexibility, and autonomy of the work as an entrepreneur. Are you supportive of the longstanding federal recognition of real estate professionals to operate as independent contractors?
Absolutely. I operated as an independent contractor for the first auction company I went to work for. And what we saw in the Tax Cut and Jobs Act is a definition of gig employees, and we saw PPP issues dealing with independent contractors and gig employees, that sort of thing. They're an important part of our economy, not just real estate professionals, but others that enjoy the freedom of working for themselves and being compensated by folks that they're not tied to as an employee. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's an important role for independent contractors. I've been one myself, and I'll support the concept of independent contractors and good tax policy that makes that attractive.
Very much.
Congressman. As stewards of the right to own, use, and transfer private property, realtors depend upon an open housing market free from discrimination. Our economy, communities, and the American people suffer when discrimination and segregation artificially constrain home ownership and limit the intergenerational wealth it builds. Yet, more than 50 years after the passage of the Fair Housing Act, home ownership rates for African Americans, Hispanics, and Asian Americans continues to lag behind that of white Americans. What can Congress do to help with this?
Well, the first question I have to ask is why? Mm-hmm. Is it an inner city issue? If you look at the total demographics of the nation, I think you have to look at it holistically. And so if you're breaking down the demographics that you just talked about for home ownership rates, you've got to take out a lot of the factors that African Americans and Asian Americans and even Hispanics to some degree, a lot of live in the urban areas where there's not necessarily a market of single family homes. And so is the product there? Is the desire to own a home there? And then you get into urban real estate, which is very expensive, whether it's a condominium or a building with what do you call it? It's not condominium, but where you have fee simple title to
Like a co-op, yeah.
Co-op. Co-op's what I was thinking about. So it's been a while since I've been in real estate. I'm sorry, but so I would add that the first question is why, and start breaking down the demographics, and then figure out what we can do. I know when I was a banker for 8.5 years, we had to operate under the Community Reinvestment Act. And if we truly looked at the 2008 crisis, I believe that some of the attributable factors to the bad mortgage market that was out there was lenders being forced to make loans in certain areas, oftentimes to folks that didn't meet the qualifications for that loan. Just because they had to have a certain percentage of their portfolio within certain areas. It was almost like reverse redlining, right? So instead of exempting an area, they were forced to loan in that area. That wasn't 100% of what it was about, but it wasn't an attributable factor, I do believe, before 2008. So I think having affordable houses, and that gets back to the building cost side of it. Whether it's tract housing or any other type of housing, having affordable housing, and then having financial instruments that are available that make it easy and attractive for folks to borrow that money and have a mortgage payment versus a rent payment. Oftentimes it's difficult for wage earners to save enough money for a down payment. There are a lot of different ways that we can create products or help financial institutions create products that help with that down payment side of it, which I think is a big entry level hurdle for too many people. So those are just some things I think about. I'm not on the committee that deals with that. We're on the committee that deals with some of the things that are driving the prices of houses up, and that's more energy efficient appliances and windows and roofing materials and that sort of thing, because we deal with energy and the environment. So some of those are driving cost up as well, and that's government regulation being pushed down from Washington to try to push a Green New Deal type concept onto the housing market to make them more energy efficient. I'm all for that, but it is an attributable factor to driving some of the prices up.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, Congressman, the Biden administration recently introduced the American Families Plan. We appreciate the administration's effort to lead our nation on a path to economic recovery after COVID-19's health pandemic, and also their recent proposal to address our nation's longstanding infrastructure and transportation challenges. But NAR believes there are several proposals in the president's plan that will negatively impact the economic growth and depress commercial real estate. What is your take on the American Families Plan?
Well, I didn't support it because it was rife with a lot of programs that were not COVID related and weren't designed to get people back to work. In fact, a lot of incentives, as I mentioned before, were there to keep people from going back and taking those jobs, and whether unemployment benefits or whatnot. I applaud Governor McMaster and others that have said, we have jobs in America and South Carolina even that we can't get employees to take. I hear from people all the time, and Cromer Food Services is one that called me recently, David, can't find anybody to take the jobs, and they're good paying jobs, north of $15 an hour. And it was because of the incentives that are out there. So I think that was a negative part. And then, they disguised a lot of the wish list items. It was like $1.8 billion in there that were economic recovery relief package that really went to plus up government programs, not helping Americans get back to work and whatnot. So these were government handouts that actually stifled the economy. The best thing we can do is have good tax policy, good trade policy, and good regulatory policy that incentivizes people to start businesses, keep those businesses open and going, employing Americans, make it easier to employ, cut some government regulation and red tape to make it easier, and incentivize that investment, individual investment by individual Americans we're not seeing that. We're seeing more of a top-down government approach to getting Americans back to work by through these policies. And I just think get government out of the way and our economy will come rocking back.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Congressman.
Yeah.
Before we go, one quick last question, if you've got time. I know you've got to go vote.
Yeah. I've got to walk over there. So
Yeah.
we're on a clock now. So go ahead.
Let me
Got 2
go ahead
minutes.
okay, 2 minutes. Over the last 12 months, I know everybody's been sort of locked down with COVID. Anything in particular, new pastime or anything you picked up during the 12 months that you
I
have
lost
enjoyed?
30 pounds.
Good for you. That's great.
Yeah,
I wish
most
I could say
people
the
were
same.
gaining the COVID-19 or whatever. I gaining the weight. I actually lost it, and it was a desire after seeing a picture of me and Donald Trump on Air Force One. I realized I was way overweight. So when we weren't in Washington, I was at home. I was able to focus on no carbs and no sweets and no alcohol and really pushing back from the table after one helping.
Yeah.
And so I would say that we should all try to get healthier, because at the end of the day, it helps you fight off any kind of viruses or whatnot if you're healthier. And I feel better, have more energy, and I would encourage anyone to try to do that.
That's a great thing to do.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you in DC next year. And
I look forward to it as well. I don't
absolutely.
like this. I like the interaction of us in the office. So I look forward to seeing you. Y'all take care. I'm gonna head to the Capitol.
You too. Thank you so much. Have a
God
good
bless.
day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.